12 across. UK's prerogative of mercy. 5-6. Knowing me, this ended up bringing to mind Portia's speech from The Merchant of Venice, right at the point when Shylock is begging for Antonio's pound of flesh. The quality of mercy is not strained. I'm always intrigued by why Portia is saying this in particular, because she has much to lose, in actual fact, from Antonio being revived and saved, apart from and it droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. Where did she learn that? Where did she learn about the importance of mercy? Why is she kind of crying out in this way at this point? Like, this is very true, but where is her character motivation / where did she learn the fact of mercy? It sounds like she's speaking from experience, yet we have no idea how that experience came to be. It's an interesting, to me, hole in, or a nice characterful thing to think about when playing Portia. I think let's just dive right in and see what's going on. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. So this idea of strained is actually a double pun here. Double meaning. We have the idea of a strained relationship. I suppose also we could talk about strained as in sprained, as in like it's very close to muscles and limbs and flesh, as is going on in this scene. But it's also to do with cookery, and when you're straining something, which would quite often in Tudor times would be through a linen cloth, it would, you would use a linen cloth, you would use something so that you would keep the detritus up while the rest would fall through. And what she's saying here is just the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. So I'm getting the impression during those lines, this idea of twice blessed, perhaps that's what she's saying the straining might be. She's saying, look, it's not strained so that one person it doesn't benefit from this. It is not like by giving it you also retract something. Actually, it gives totally. You get everything when mercy comes down. It is not strained. It is mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty. Yeah. So, what have the players done recently that this is coming out? I'm thoroughly enjoying it at the moment, just noticing all the kind of little censorship moments of Shakespeare just saying, "Please don't close the playhouses and strip me of my livelihood," in all the plays. So, yeah. Mercy becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty. So I don't think this is just, or perhaps that's the answer to my question earlier. This isn't actually Portia particularly speaking. This is a double meaning of that time. And Portia is the vessel through which Shakespeare allows this speech to come. Interesting again, the attribute to awe and majesty, and of course mightiest. There's a lot of M's here, monarch, but monarch and majesty. Even then, majesty would also mean the king or the crown. So he's using the word majesty as an attribute rather than just as the noun of your majesty, saying that this is what a king should be doing. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. Wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. So the attribute to awe and majesty wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. The idea being that actually a king doesn't have to give mercy, but when it does, it is the mightiest in the mightiest. And the fact that he can withhold mercy is where the dread and fear of kings can sit. But, this is interesting again, but mercy is above this sceptred sway. Shakespeare often talks about the ruling in terms of scepters. I'm interested by that. I've never done much more research into it, but Scepter Nile is a very famous quote from Richard II. And his scepter shows the force of temporal power, so scepter up there, but mercy is above this sceptred sway. It becomes the throne of... It's interesting. Okay, so his scepter, but mercy is above the sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show like as gods when mercy seasons justice. Ooh, this is interesting, because it is... What's really being said is that mercy is the greatest of all virtues, that mercy will benefit everyone, who get both the person who gives and the person who receives it, and that it is the best attribute to be seen in a king, that it becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. The scepter, I think, is being used as the symbol for justice and for law in here, saying that his scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptred sway. So there's an interesting interplay here around, I suppose, the divine right of kings, but also about the human element versus the wielder of the power of the land. What Portia's arguing in this particular circumstance is that Shylock should give over what he supposedly is due by the law of the land, which is Antonio's pound of flesh. That is what is represented by the scepter during this bit. Which is also bringing in this interplay about some kind of plea from the actual players and from the playwright to the king and in the vessel of Portia. This is so interesting. There are so many different layers going on. But mercy is above this sceptred sway. So mercy is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. Now that's interesting, because what Shakespeare's also saying is that, okay, there's the king who's the law of the land. The scepter is the law of the land. So often there was an idea of predetermination, not so much now, particularly after James and after the whole Wars of the Roses. This idea of divine right of kings had disintegrated a bit. Divine right of kings meant that this person was born predetermined and destined to be the king of that country. So you wouldn't actually fight against it, because he was always meant to be your king, and he is the vessel through which God would rule and would govern your land. Which frankly is actually quite a sensible way of stopping wars. You know, if you say God literally wants this guy, so even if you find him difficult, work with him. Good way of keeping, self-preservation of life going, particularly after what happened with the Wars of the Roses and the amount of death once Henry Bolingbroke, who became Henry VII, finally snapped at Richard II. But anyway, back to this. It is the enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute of God himself. So he's saying there's a personal thing about the merciful hearts of kings that, as a person, forgetting the status of your land, the scepter, you should be feeling mercy. It is the greatest attribute, but it's also an attribute of God. So, in other words, you'd be acting in God's interest to be merciful. Which actually is quite interesting again. Oh, here's me just working this all out. It's very interesting again, considering that later on, therefore Jew. So which God are we talking about? What did Jew... I mean, that is a whole different essay for a different time, but what did Jew mean when Portia is saying this to Shylock? The attribute to God himself. Which God? Perhaps that's one reason why this speech doesn't actually work on him. And earthly power doth then show likest gods when mercy seasons justice. Again, actually, cookery metaphor, seasons. So we've got the straining up here, and then we've got seasons down here. Someone had his mind on his dinner when he was writing this. When earthly power doth then show likest gods, when mercy seasons justice. So there's a slight kind of interplay, a slight hints at the fact that, okay, the divine right of kings is now dead in our time, but you will be acting in the divine way of as God's representative to this country if you season your justice, your scepter, with mercy. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this, that in the course of justice none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy. Again, actually, this is a whole interesting thing, that salvation and the course of justice and we pray for mercy, that's all very Christ. The forgiveness, the turning the other cheek, all of these stories which are in the New Testament, not the Old, and therefore not the religion of Shylock. So that's an interesting interplay. Again, I wonder if that's ignorance on Portia's part, or as an actor, you could probably play with, is she trying to provoke him? Does she know this isn't going to work? That could be quite an interesting element to take this. Because she's using the wrong language to persuade him. She's using the cultural reference points that he doesn't, that show his otherness. I have spoken thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea. So again, it's this, the scepter and the peace, and there is the right thing to do, and there's also what is due to you. And there are these two different things intermingling. So her main argument through this is that is really this aspect of pleading with any kind of authority figure, saying we might be treading the line here, but there is the law, and then there is actually what is morally right to do. And then she does have to admit by the very end of this, I have spoken thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follow, this strict court of Venice must needs give sentence against the merchant there. I'm just wondering what is going on in the politics of when Merchant was first performed, because it definitely sounds like one of the actors, or possibly a number of them, or possibly a playhouse or someone, was on the wrong side of the law at this point, and they're admitting, yeah, they did wrong, and if you want to follow the absolute letter of it, you should close them. That's also the wrong thing to do. That's actually what's mainly coming across here. Something I didn't expect to find in this particular speech. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. It is mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His sceptre shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself, and earthly power doth then show likest gods when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this, that in the course of justice none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. I have spoken thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which, if thou follow, this strict court of Venice must needs give sentence 'gainst the merchant there.